For me, the 29th of August was a different day than any other day when we talk about hurricanes, because that morning the sun was shining, and all the other hurricanes that we've been through, and every year we had a hurricane. So we're talking, for me, 40 years back, the day before Katrina would have been raining, and the day that we left to go to Nashville, Tennessee was Sunday morning, and the sun was shining. We got on the road, and we were actually on the road to go to Nashville, and my mother, my granddaughter, Shania, and Shemai, my mother Joyce, my cousin Hyman, my son Robert, and some more friends packed up into my son's Everett SUV, taking them to Nashville, and they ran into so much traffic that the road trip was actually going to kill my mother, and they came back here. And when they got back on Tennessee Street, the first thing I said, "What the hell are y'all doing back here?" And we jumped in the truck and we went to the Superdome. And when we got to the Superdome, the lines were so long that would have also done my mother in. So I asked the police officer, "What can I do to get my mother into the Superdome?" She said, "Well, go around the back of it to special needs, and maybe they'll take you in." Special needs wasn't set up, and they actually turned us away, told us to go back home, and we would actually get a chance to come back later. But because my son lived in Chalmette, he got trapped back there. The power went out, the phone service went out. Cell phones had been dead earlier that day. So we basically were back home. We kept our clothes on. We were dressed, waiting for something to happen, but we never thought that we would have 25 feet of water. Our biggest concern would have been trees falling. There would have been some rain, some wind, but it never would have been the kind of water that we were facing the next morning. So at about 4:30 in the morning, my brother, or about 4 o'clock in the morning, my brother Jonathan woke us up and said, "Robert, we have water in the house." And actually at that time we had water that was shin high, and we gathered up my mother, my 3 granddaughters, my cousin Hyman into one room where she was. And Jonathan and I actually came outside to look and see what was going on outside, since we had water in the house. And we had a 2-story house across the street, and we actually broke into my neighbor's house, and Jonathan went up. I stayed in the front door so that my family wouldn't think that we abandoned them. And when he went into the second floor, he said, "Robert," when he came back, standing in the middle of the street, "It's not going to work. It wasn't finished." So he said, "We got to go into the attic." Now, Jonathan is standing in the middle of the street. He's 6 feet 8 inches tall, and the water is chest high, so the water had rose to 6 feet high. When we walked back into the house, the furniture was floating. The beds that my grandkids and my mother were on were floating. So we decided we had to get into the attic. So we had 5 minutes to get from inside of the house, 5 minutes to get into the attic. We commandeered an on wire which was floating through a china cabinet, put it in the middle to the entrance to the attic. I went up first. He reached with my grandkids, he reached with my mother, he reached with my cousin Herman, then he climbed up. He kicked the vent out and looked outside and said, "Robert, this is not going to work. We got to get on the roof." And we didn't have an axe in the roof, so he had literally started kicking at the roof with his foot. And while he was kicking at the roof with his foot, we all had gathered around a piece of the attic that had a floor on it. And because we were together as a family, we lived together as a family, they weren't afraid because we were still together.